Running Aces Casino and Racetrack is the Twin Cities' premier choice for exciting entertainment. 24/7 gaming and dining, monthly comedy shows, and $1 blackjack with no commission or ante, making it the most player-friendly casino around. Trout Air Tavern at Running Aces offers Minnesota-inspired handcrafted dishes with locally sourced ingredients and the trout that made the area famous. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, 25 minutes north of downtown. Visit runaces.com. Running Aces, your night out is waiting.
We interrupt this program to bring you Vikings Vent Line, the one show where you get to react to how the Purple played right away. Call in now with your thoughts on the game. 651-646-8255. This is Vikings Vent Line.
2nd and 9 from inside the 10 as Allen looks, takes off. He can run with it. Allen reaches for the pylon, and I think he has it. Wait for a signal. Finally, we get one of the linesmen says touchdown. 3rd and 7 from the 10. Pressure on Cousins. Pocket collapsing, and Cousins, the ball comes out, and it looks like Buffalo's recovered. They got it. Buffalo football at the 15. Here's Cousins. Pressure on him, and the ball's out again. And the Bills recovered again at the 25-yard line. Now with 3 wides. Allen. Now he's going down the field. He's got a man wide open, and it's a touchdown for the Bills. They did it. Jason Kroom. There was no one in that secondary at all, Tony.
Anthony Barr coming up the middle, free safety. Gotta get it go.
Allen steps up. Jumps over the defenders to pick up the first. Allen gets away from Hunter, trying to anyway. Oh, finds Ivory. No one's there. Now there's some players down at the 10. Tries to split him, and he's down to the 5.
And the vent lines are open. 651-646-8255, 877-615-1500. And also streaming live and taking your comments in written form on Periscope/Twitter. It's just the 1500 ESPN account on Twitter and Periscope. Manny Hill, Phil Mackey with you as long as you want to call. We got Jonathan taking your phone calls and playing all of those highlights that were mostly from the first quarter for the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
And I think the question off the bat here is, before we get to Chancey, first off, 651-646-8255. Is this the most embarrassing Vikings loss when you consider the context? Home game, rookie quarterback, 17-point favorites,
Bad
all things
team.
considered, yes.
Bad team. Yeah.
Most embarrassing Vikings loss since blank. Ever?
The easy answer would be the NFC Championship game, right? But
Eagles in a road game.
But that's a championship game against the team that went on to win the Super Bowl in your backyard, by the way. But I mean, wow. I cited that Colts game from 2 years ago when Andrew Luck came in and just threw the ball all over the place on this Mike Zimmer defense. Now, they had some injuries. Those guys were banged up.
And it's Andrew Luck.
But it's Andrew Luck. I can't think of a more embarrassing, pathetic, disgusting performance by this team. Just like you said, considering the context of a rookie quarterback, a team that has been drilled the first 2 weeks of the season, and arguably the worst team in football, and you're favored by 17 points to beat them.
People are chiming in. I'm just reading some of these comments on our Twitter/Periscope feed. I got my laundry done and dishes clean in the second half. Productive Sunday. Yes. Let's go right to the vent lines here, Manny. This whole episode and the season of Vikings Vent Line powered by Lucky's 13 as well. You could probably go for some of those Lucky's 13 Bloody Marys after this one. Chancey and Fargo, your opinion is first. Go ahead.
First off, which Minnesota coach had his team less prepared this weekend? P.J. Fleck or Mike Zimmer? Straight up. Number two.
Hold on. I think, just to answer that quick, I think Mike Zimmer by far, because you've got a freshman quarterback, Gophers, and like a bunch of freshman players.
The Gophers yesterday. First off, I mean, this is Vikings Vent Line, but I'm going to go in on the Gophers here for a second. First of all, everybody, this is what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago when the Gophers were 3-0, or just, I guess, after last week, when they were 3-0, and everybody's saying, boy, I think they could find a way to win 8 or 9 or maybe even 10 games this year. Look at the rest of the Big Ten West.
I think I told you 8.
But like this is that.
that
I mean, yesterday is why that was just a come back to earth type of game for the Gophers. Like it's a big jump even to the Big Ten from your non-conference schedule. But as far as coaches that had their team unprepared, it's Mike Zimmer between the two guys. It's not even close.
Yeah.
This was awful today.
So Chancey, there's question 1. What's your next one?
Well, I was wondering, I don't know how much you guys have for staffing levels there in the old vent line studio, but maybe somebody could run down to the field now and untie Riley Reef from the post he's been hooked up to for the last 3 hours. That would be helpful.
I think it was a fire hydrant that was attached to his right leg. It makes it very difficult to get out of your stance. Yeah,
he made me miss Matt Khalil today. That was, and he's our best lineman, right? So supposedly, anyway. Number 3, I feel bad for the Danny Green family. Can they have a redo on their Ring of Honor induction? Because can't believe there were too many people ready to clap and cheer at halftime of that game. So,
well, it was dangerously close to a 41 donut tribute at home today. Maybe that was the goal.
Maybe that's what they were going for. Yeah,
could have been.
Right?
Yeah. Chancey, thank you for the phone call. Let's keep buzzing through here. We have a couple open phone lines, and I know the game's not over. Usually we advertise when the game's over. We couldn't help ourselves.
Well, this game's been over for a while.
Yeah,
I think.
We did a halftime vent line, too, on Periscope. 651-646-8255, 877-615-1500. Will in St. Paul.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. This might be a stretch, but do you think what happened with Carlson last weekend and that collapse had anything to do with the game today? Because, I'm looking at it, and there's no reason for this to happen. I mean, there weren't any crazy storylines this week. I mean, there's not any reason that this should happen. Do you think, tying last week when you should have won the game, do you think that had any effect on them throughout the week and today?
Yeah, well, thanks for the call. I don't think the Carlson thing had anything to do with this. I think this was just Mike Zimmer not having the team ready to play. And I don't know if it's overlooking the Bills because you're 17-point favorites and you're so looking ahead to the Rams on Thursday or whatever it was, but this was just, they were not ready to play today. For whatever reason, they were not ready to play today. And they had some guys that were out. Cook was out. Everson Griffin was out. But from a personnel standpoint, they had enough to still dominate the Buffalo Bills today. And they haven't done it. They were not ready to play today at all.
Can we also give a tip of the cap to the Leslie Frazier schemed Tampa 2 defense that held the Vikings to 4-yard passes? Tony Romo with the line of the game. And actually, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz wound up being a saving grace if you were watching this game on TV because they were good, and Tony Romo told it like it was the whole game. And they come back from, mid fourth quarter, and the Vikings have 92 yards to go, and they're down by 4 touchdowns, and Jim Nantz comes back from break and goes, another long field for the Vikings. And Tony Romo goes, and the Vikings are going to spend, I'm going to butcher the line, and the Vikings are going to throw 4-yard passes under duress for another drive or whatever. Let's go to Eric in Bismarck. You're on Vikings Vent Line with Manny and Mackey.
Thanks for taking my call. You were wondering earlier about the most embarrassing Vikings loss. There are just way too many to choose from. Today certainly ranks up there. But here's what I'm wondering. And I mean, these are old cliched questions, but at what point do the Vikings really start addressing the offensive line? We had some good offseason acquisitions. Nate Solder went to the Giants. I mean, this offensive line is historically awful. It's awful, guys. I mean, there was one offensive line that I thought was worse than ours, and that was Detroit against New York Jets. But ours is right up there. And then secondly, is this defense, is this starting to become a trend, or is this just an aberration? Thank you.
Well, first of all, there's nothing you can do to address the offensive line in the middle of the season here, because unless you're thinking about some sort of a big blockbuster trade, which almost never happens in the NFL.
Right.
Getting Pat Elflein back, and I know he was back today, but getting him actually back in the mix and in football shape, that definitely helps. But Riley Reef
take a couple of weeks though.
Right, and Riley Reef was the guy you signed to fix the left tackle spot, and I don't know if he was banged up today. Because Riley Reef was 3 seconds late getting out of his stance every Hughes, single snap.
Well, there was one Hughes that played well in the game today. It was Jerry Hughes, who continuously beat Riley Reef off the edge probably 10, 11, 12 times today. At least that's what it seemed like.
It was bad.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Yeah, it led directly to at least one of those Kirk Cousins fumbles in the first half, too. Okay, one other note, too, on the Kirk Cousins deal. So I get it's not 100% your fault when you hit your 5 or 7 step drop, you get to your final step, and there's a defensive end ready to put his shoulder pad in your lower spinal region, and the ball pops out. So some of that is just, you got to get better blocking up front. Mm-hmm. But Kirk Cousins, in his 3 years with Washington as the starting quarterback from 2015 through 17, fumbled more than any quarterback in the NFL. He fumbled 13 times last year for Washington. So this is definitely a thing.
Until today.
It's a thing. Yeah, it's like the Dante thing, where Dante had really small hands, and then 2 or 3 times a game.
275-pound quarterback with the smallest hands on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a thing.
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins, again, this goes back to what I've talked about the last couple of weeks. That's kind of concerned me a little bit about him, and we saw it in the 49ers game. We saw it a little bit last week. And granted, last week he redeemed himself because he had a terrific second half, just torched the Packers defense. But today it was back to the same stuff where he's holding on to the ball a little bit too long. The pocket presence isn't necessarily what you would like it to be because he's not really stepping up as much. He doesn't really look to be mobile in terms of trying to extend a play to try and get himself in a position where he can make a better throw downfield. It's like when the pressure comes, he either doesn't really have a sense of it or he just is determined to just stand in one spot in the pocket and not adjust, and he's just completely oblivious to the pressure. And that's going to be something to look for because this offensive line is not as good as you need it to be.
Let's go to Ben in Florida. You're on Vikings Vent Line, powered by Lucky's 13.
So this U.S. Bank Stadium has had some great wins and some ugly losses. And this is definitely one of those ugly losses. I'm not going to go off on this team because I have really no clue where they are. They have a good win against San Francisco and an unnecessary tie against the Packers and a bad loss. And the Packers right now are losing to Washington pretty handily. So I'm not going to say this team is cooked, but the offensive line and defense has got to play a lot better. And one other note too, where is the running game? That is a concern. That is probably a major concern I have. Where is the running game? The running game is not there. So at 1-1-1, I mean, it could be worse. You could be 0-2 or 0-3 right now. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, they probably. I mean, to get that tie against the Packers. Otherwise, we'd be looking at 1-2 and games against two of the best teams in the NFL. Although, if you look up and down right now, so Ben is right. The Packers are down by 14 points right now in Washington. So they're about to drop to 1-1-1 with
how much time is left?
2-minute warning, and Green Bay does have the ball, but that game's pretty much over.
I don't know. It's Aaron Rodgers.
The Eagles, is that game over yet? Let's see here. The Eagles were
a tight one with the Colts, right?
Still going on there.
The Eagles just won. They won 20-16.
Okay.
They were trailing throughout almost the entire fourth quarter.
Carson Wentz was back today, right?
Yes. And he performed pretty well, 255 yards. But the Eagles improved to 2-1. So and the Saints are tied 37-37 against the Falcons. So one of those teams is going to be 1-2. So this loss doesn't put a nail in your season coffin, but your schedule is not easy. You've got these 2 games coming up in which you're probably going to be underdogs in both of those games. And so you're staring at 1-3-1 right now if you don't steal one of those games against the Rams on the road or Philadelphia.
What did we say at the start of the year when we looked at the first 5 games? The 2 home games were the ones that you absolutely needed to have. And now they've dropped one of them. And now you're headed to L.A. against arguably the best team in football on Thursday on a short week. You're going to get, that sort of half bye week because you're having a short turnaround this week, and then you got to go to Philadelphia. I mean, this is a bad loss. This is a bad loss because you put yourself behind the 8 ball with this because this was one of the games that you had to have. You absolutely had to have.
I don't think it ruins your season.
No.
But if you're looking back and you're not going to go 13-3 again, you can't mathematically because you have a tie. But like you're not going to run the schedule the same way you did last year. So 11-5 was sort of that. Okay, if you can get 11-5, drop off in the regular season, but make another push for the postseason. And if you're in a battle in an NFC with maybe 7, 8, 9 viable teams, this is going to be a game that you look back on if you're jockeying for position or home field or whatever. This game absolutely matters at the end of the year. 651-646-8255. Let's go to Blake in Eveleth. Go ahead, Blake. Actually, I think Blake just hung up on us there. Let's try David in Minneapolis. Hey, David.
Hey, good afternoon. So if your offensive line is getting crushed and you have edge rushers constantly coming off, I don't know the wisdom of bringing Kyle Rudolph to chip people. The guy can't block anybody. I'm really worried about the Vikings. They're tackling. They're not very sure this year. And then Anthony Barr, I mean, he played terrible.
Yeah, Barr was a disaster. Barr, first of all,
he was awful in his first half, especially was just brutal.
Yeah, Josh Allen hurdled him on one occasion, and then he had just the most boneheaded 15-yard horse collar penalty. The Vikings had about 3 boneheaded 15-yard penalties in this game.
Well, even on the first drive, Linval Joseph's penalty, that set the tone really for the whole game because you had Josh Allen bottled up for, I think it would have been a 3-and-out for Buffalo, and that penalty keeps the drive alive. Then Anthony Barr gets a face mask penalty for 15 yards. So you give the Bills 30 yards on their first possession. You're giving them confidence. You're giving them momentum. Josh Allen takes advantage, and you're down 7-0. I mean, that just, it set the tone for the entire afternoon.
Yeah. Just reading some of your comments here on the Periscope/Twitter feed, or you can find us just at 1500 ESPN on Twitter or Periscope if you want to watch the live feed of Vikings Vent Line. Jared AFC says Vikings need to give refunds to the fans for watching this crap. A couple people saying I think it had a little bit to do with last week, just some sort of a letdown factor. Other people are commenting on the Everson Griffin. Like there's rumors that something happened with Everson Griffin. I have not been able to dig on this, and I haven't seen any credible reports that something other than injury is keeping him out. I don't know. We'll leave that to reckless speculation until we can find just a few more details on it. Let's see. Gardner says, never thought we'd have the same record as Cleveland this year. Hey, Cleveland's played pretty well in their 3 games, except for the first quarter against the Jets. Cleveland's played 3 close games and they've won one of them. Let's go to Jim in Colorado. You're next up on Vent Line, Jim.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Well, we're trying to figure out what the hell we just saw, Jim. What did you just see? Oh, Jim can't hear us. Jim Clack, 651-646-8255. Austin in North Dakota. Go ahead. You're on Vent Line.
Hey, Phil. How are you?
I don't know if I've seen worse, but it's not entirely shocking, I guess, even though we were 100% sure they would. I mean, the Vikings do this. This is kind of classic Vikings in some ways. What did you think?
I don't know. Usually, once a year under Zimmer, we kind of have this game where just nothing goes right.
Mm-hmm.
This was that game. So, I mean, defensively, first half was horrible. And O-line was bad the whole game, and just Kirk was off. And I mean, let's give Buffalo credit. I mean, they came ready to play, and
yeah. Buffalo definitely read press clippings all week and watched talking head shows all week and said, we're not just going to come in here. Like we're going to come in and our quarterback is going to do a John Elway helicopter spin, and our defense is going to try and strip the ball from Kirk Cousins. But I even thought once it was 17-0 in the first quarter, I thought that's a really bad way to start. But if you gun to the head at 17-0 with 3 quarters to go, you have to pick a team right now. I would have said Vikings still. Mm-hmm. I thought there's no way Buffalo can sustain this for 3 hours, and there's no way the Vikings at home are going to play this poorly for 3 hours. And I was wrong.
The Vikings got punched in the mouth today at the start. I mean, you had the penalties. on the first Buffalo drive, they go down and they score. So that's the first haymaker that the Bills threw in this game. And then you get on the ensuing possession for the Vikings, you get the fumble. That was another punch. And the Vikings just never responded. And that gave the Bills more and more confidence. I mean, the thing of it is we, all week we talked about how, and I'm throwing myself right into this. We talked about how the Bills had no chance. And regardless of what players say after games about, oh yeah, we don't really care about what the media says, that's BS. They hear all this stuff. You think Josh Allen didn't hear that everybody was basically calling him a lame duck going into this matchup? Mm-hmm. He heard all of that stuff. You could see it in his play. You could see it in his play today. He heard all of it.
We were guilty in the pregame, too.
Sure, absolutely.
That this could be a game that sets his career back, right? We should actually just spend 20 minutes replaying 2 segments from us before the game. And not that we were the only ones all week, but yeah, 651-646-8255. One open line right now if you want to grab it, 651-646-8255. And let's go to Lou in Oakdale. Go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, hi, guys. First, I think that got to me is this defense has never been the same since the New Orleans in the second half of that game last year at the end of the season. It's still not the same as that. They're not dominating anything at all. And so I think teams have figured out what the Vikings defense has been doing and exploiting it for all the time and that. So I think that's one main problem. And Zimmer's getting out coached and everything, especially on defense.
Yeah, and Lou, here's something to add to what Lou just said. And thank you for the call. It's really, really hard to maintain the NFL's number one defense for multiple years. Mm-hmm. Things happen. Players get hurt. Offenses sort of figure out ways to attack you differently. The 1985 Bears defense was one of the greatest maybe the greatest defense of all time. Innovative scheme, Hall of Fame players. Go look at where that defense was 2 or 3 years later. I think they were number one maybe 2 years in a row. People think, the 80s Bears defenses. And 2 or 3 years later, it was a shadow of itself. So it's small windows for great defenses.
It really is. And even I'll give you a couple of other teams to look back on, like historically great defense. Look at the Ravens defense from 2001, a year after the 2000 Ravens defense, which was arguably the greatest defense ever, along with the 85 Bears. Go look at the 2003 Buccaneers after their Super Bowl win the year before. Remember that was the year of the Monday night game where Peyton Manning scored like 4 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And the Colts came back on that Monday night game in Tampa to win that game. That was just a year removed from being the Buccaneers defense that destroyed the Raiders in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really, really hard. And this is why the Vikings went and got Kirk Cousins, because I think there was a little bit of an anticipation that the defense could fall off a little bit. Now, today, they were brutal today. And I don't know if that was an anomaly or if that is a sign of things to come. But what I do know is that this is why they went out and got Kirk Cousins in the first place, because you can't rely on your defense being statistically number one across the board for 2 years in a row.
And even though they got down, it was just bang, bang. They get down. The defense allows a couple huge plays, and Cousins gets stripped. And Cousins had a chance with at least 2 or 3 throws. Wide open Adam Thielen over the middle. There was a couple throws to Thielen in that first quarter. And I don't know if he was skittish because the Buffalo Bills were getting pressure, but he sat back there with a lot of time on a couple throws early and just airmailed receivers. And that helped set the tone, too. It's like, okay, well, this was your chance to dig out from underneath the hole at home. Mm-hmm. And now Kirk Cousins is inaccurate. And this is Kirk Cousins, too. Kirk Cousins fumbles. Yep. Go look at his track record with Washington. He'll give you those games like he gave you on the road against the Packers. He gives you the upside of one of the top 7 or 8 quarterbacks in the NFL when he's locked in. But he also gives you the downside that you saw today. I mean, this is part of Kirk Cousins. And the difference between a Kirk Cousins and an Aaron Rodgers isn't necessarily upside. Both are capable of throwing for 400 yards and carrying a team in the second half like you saw last week. Mm-hmm. But Aaron Rodgers doesn't do this. Tom Brady doesn't do this.
Yeah.
So that downside is what keeps Kirk Cousins from being one of those tier 1 quarterbacks.
And the downside we saw today, you couple it with the bad defensive effort, this is what you get. Even against a quote-unquote bad team like the Buffalo Bills, today everything was bad across the board. You got the worst out of Kirk Cousins, you got the worst out of your defense, You got the worst out of special teams and discipline and all of that stuff, and you get your butts whooped at home by a 17-point underdog.
Yeah. I mean, put it this way. The top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the NFL don't lose at home to Josh Allen. They just don't. And I know that the quarterbacks weren't the only 2 guys on the field. There's other circumstances, but it's just a fact. 651-646-8255, 877-615-1500. Let's try Chad in Colorado. Hey, Chad.
Hey, guys. 45-year Colorado Viking fan here. You know, I love my Vikings, but come on, man. Really? Getting beat by the Bills? In my 45 years as a Viking fan, I have never been so embarrassed. This is absolutely ridiculous. The secondary is getting their butts whipped nonstop, left and right. We lose Trey. The offensive line can't do a darn thing. Elflin comes back, thank God, but doesn't do a darn thing. Why are we getting and starting Pat Elflein when, you know what, he hasn't earned it? Why are we doing that?
Yeah, that's a lot of great rhetorical questions from Chad. I mean, I thought playing Pat Elflein was important because you want to get him out there. Matthew Collar brought up a good point this week. Just put him out there, treat it as kind of like an exhibition game for him, and then he'll be a little bit more ready against the Rams. You didn't think you'd lose the game, though.
You got to get him out there. And the idea is that you're playing an inferior opponent, and the best time to get him out there, to get him ready, because you want to have him fully available for a road game on a short week against arguably the best team in football. You want to have him 100% ready to go, and there's no better way, in theory, than to get him sort of a test run, sort of a warm-up situation, because you don't want him going into that Rams game cold.
The tail of the tape in this game wound up, because of garbage time, the Vikings did chunk out quite a bit of yardage. So both teams finished with 292 yards on roughly the same number of plays. It just wound up turnovers. The Vikings turned the ball over 3 times, and then they had drives stall out because of whiffing on 4th down. So it wound up, the Vikings defense wound up playing better in the second half. Part of that's because the Bills just stopped being aggressive. So both teams with 292 yards of total offense. The Vikings actually wound up with 21 first downs to the Bills' 16. But some of that stuff's going to be really deceiving just based on how the Bills shut her down and went into clock mode in the second half. 651-646-8255. Todd in South Dakota, you're next up on Vent Line.
Hey, everybody's got to relax here a little bit. This was a perfect loss. Non-divisional game. About 3 years ago, they got stomped by San Francisco. Come out the next week, played their butts off. I don't think it's that big of a deal. Plus, Green Bay lost. I think it's a perfect situation.
That's an optimistic phone call right there.
I got to be honest. I disagree. I mean, listen. All that is going to depend on how they play the rest of the way. All that's going to depend on how they play the rest of the way. If you go into St. Louis. If you go into L.A. on Thursday and you lose, and then you go into Philadelphia a week and a half later and you lose, you're 1-3-1. I mean, you have to. These are the games. And look, last year we could have looked at that Lions game.
Yeah.
That they lost at home 14-7 and said, what's the big deal?
I think the way
that was the difference between that game was the difference between them hosting versus being on the road in the NFC Championship game.
This is the toughest part of their schedule, just on paper, and schedules change as you evolve through the season. And I thought if they could get out of the first 5 games 3-2, so 2 losses, and so I guess the equivalent now would be could you get out of it 2-1?
Mm-hmm.
Can you just win one of these next 2 games? I think if you win one of these next 2 games, it still puts you on a path for 10 or 11 wins, which gets you into the playoffs. So, but yeah, I mean, this is one of those. It doesn't wreck your season yet, but like you're saying, put a pin in this.
Yeah.
And let's revisit in late November, early December and see where they're at in the NFC.
Because what happens now, because you dropped this game, this was a bad loss. And the only way to make up for a bad loss is if you go now and win a game that you were not favored to win, which is going to be one of, if not both, of these next 2 games. You're going to be underdogs. You're going to be underdogs on Thursday. You're probably going to be underdogs in Philadelphia. You have to win one of these next 2 games, at least.
Vikes Twins 1 here on Periscope says he's reacting to the last call. Never been that embarrassed as a Vikings fan. Let me count the times. So, yeah, it just depends on your perspective. Getting to the NFC Championship game and then losing 41-0 to Kerry Collins is really embarrassing when you have Hall of Fame receivers on the field, etc. But this is historically one of the most, in terms of what the spread was and the perception of both teams and the fact that it was being played at home, this is one of the biggest upsets in recent NFL history. I do have a nugget to get to here, either after a couple more calls or maybe next segment, that should give Vikings fans more hope that there is precedent. A team that once went on to win the Super Bowl actually had a very similar loss in. We'll just leave it there. We'll come back to that at some point. Full phone lines right now: 651-646-8255. Anthony in St. Paul, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, I just wanted to say it's just an absolutely embarrassing loss, unacceptable. What do you guys think about? Is it time for Spielman to go, and maybe even Zimmer? I'll just hang up and listen here.
Wait, are you you're firing both today? If you were the Wilfs, would you fire both today? Is that what you're saying?
I would say Spielman for sure. I'm not sure about Zimmer. I think he deserves a chance for sure, but absolutely embarrassing, especially with the offensive line and just non-drafting. Just want to hang up and listen to your thoughts on that.
All right, so I think it's ludicrous to start firing Mike Zimmer after this game.
Yeah, you're not even gonna fire Rick Spielman after this game.
You don't fire GMs to prove a point mid-season. You fire GMs if the vision has gone awry. You fire GMs if you're the New York Giants a year ago, right? Where just the vision has gone awry. The vision hasn't gone awry. This was a terrible loss. And Mike Zimmer, I still think, is one of the best coaches in the NFL. Look what he's done record-wise with this team. First of all, he's built the best defense in the NFL. So that happened last year. They had the best defense in the NFL. And the Vikings have had a pretty incredible record under Zimmer, considering how much turmoil they've had at quarterback. They've had a rookie and a second-year guy in Teddy Bridgewater. They had Sam Bradford / Sean Hill / Case Keenum, career backup, right? So let's not go crazy here. Mike Zimmer is still a wonderful coach. This was a terrible game, and you can put a lot of it on him. I think it's okay to say both those things.
Yeah, I don't think people being upset about this loss today, I don't think that's an overreaction. I think people have a right to be upset because they were brutal today against a team that is not as good as them.
Yeah.
They just did not show up to play today. But you don't want to get to the point where after a game like this where you're ready to fire the GM and get rid of the head coach.
No,
like that's
absurd.
just you can't do that after 3 games.
It's absurd.
And who are you going to hire? What are you going to? I mean, what are you? Who? If Mike Zimmer were to get fired, who would take? Would Prefer be the de facto interim coach?
Prefer's prized punter booted one 10 yards deep past the goal line too. That's 2 touchbacks we've seen.
He got that 70-yard punt though. Phil.
He did.
That rolled about 50 yards.
He did. It was a good bounce. Thomas in Nevada, you're on with Manny and Mackey. Lucky's 13 powering Vent Line. What's going on, Thomas? Hey, Thomas. We got a little delay there with Thomas, so he'll have to call back. 651-646-8255. Let's try Dan and Blaine. Dan, we're dissecting an embarrassing loss here. Help us.
I actually had a question about the hit on Stephon Diggs by the linebacker for the Bills. It looked like they drove him into the ground, and then they were taunting him, and I was wondering why they didn't throw a call, or unsportsmanlike call.
Yeah.
And if Diggs goes down, where are the Vikings there, after a cheap hit like that?
Well, I'll tell you why they didn't throw a flag, because the random wheel of 15-yard penalties that the refs spin after every play wound up on no flag that time. But Clay Matthews got unlucky again today when they spun that 50-50 wheel where they're literally flipping a coin on every call because they have no bleeping idea what they're supposed to be looking for. I don't know. I don't even know what every play. It's like, is that a penalty? I don't know. I don't even know what I'm watching anymore.
It's very simple. If Stephon Diggs was a quarterback, there would have been a 15-yard penalty. No question.
Yeah.
No question. If he was a quarterback, that would have been a 15-yard penalty.
Yeah. Let's go to, we're flying through calls here on Vikings Vent Line. Mike in Ohio. Go ahead. Your thoughts.
Hey, big fan of the show, guys.
Thanks
Mike. Appreciate it.
Major concern. Football comes down to 2 things: being able to run the football and stop the run. Major concerns with the Vikings running game right now. You guys got to agree with that, right?
Yeah, like Dalvin Cook is such a better running back than Latavius Murray. And even in a game like this where you fall down and you're going to replace running the ball with short passes, there were 2 or 3 plays where you saw Latavius Murray lining up as a receiver in formations that Dalvin Cook would be out there, and it's so unnatural for him. It doesn't look right. He had that one where maybe it was an ill-advised throw, but he had his hands on the ball over the middle, and he gets crunched by 2 players.
Yeah,
and
the
it's
ball
like,
popped up, and it landed into the lap of a linebacker, and it was a pick.
Yes.
Yeah, the thing with running the ball, and we've kind of talked about this before, I think there's still kind of this old school mentality of you got to establish the run. You got to run the football, establish the run. More than anything, I think you just have to, when it comes to running the football, I think you just have to include it in your offense enough to where the defense respects it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not worried if Dalvin Cook is getting 3.8 yards a carry or whatever he's at right now. I think it might even be lower than that. It's a little bit concerning, but because you're able to use Dalvin Cook in the short passing game, that can make up for what you're not getting from him by just turning around and handing the ball off to him.
Yeah.
And that was missing today. Like that's part of the deal is, when your better guys are out, then there are certain aspects that the guys that are in to replace him just don't bring. So they did miss Dalvin Cook a little bit today, but to be honest with you, Phil, I don't know if Dalvin Cook would have played today if it would have really made much of a difference because I just don't think the team was ready to play today at all.
As Mike Zimmer just told the assembled media, players being out had nothing to do with why they lost the game today.
Do people really think if Everson Griffin played today, it would have made any difference? It wouldn't have really mattered. It would have been, maybe the score would have been different, but they just weren't ready to play today.
Yeah, it was just a collective. I guess in some ways, I don't know if it was a trap game necessarily, but it felt like a collective. All right, we're playing at home. Buffalo's terrible. It's a rookie quarterback. This team destroys rookie quarterbacks. It felt like they had played the result out in their heads before they took the field today. 651-646-8255. Vikings vent line here carries on with Juan in outstate Minnesota. Where are you, Juan? What's going on?
I'm in Los Angeles, actually, listening to you guys.
Right on. What do you got to say?
Yeah, honestly, is it time to start kind of hitting the panic button on this team? I guess, my kind of worry is we kind of get a rough start to the season. We got a little lucky against the 49ers. They had a lot of chances to win that game. We saw kind of Kirk Cousins fumbling a little bit there, and then week 2 in Green Bay, you talk about the first half, Kirk holding onto the ball too long. He had a great second half there, but then obviously today just not having it. Is it time to start worrying that this team isn't really what we thought it was going to be this year?
Yeah, I'm not hitting a panic. I want to see what they look like against the Rams and the Eagles.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
You'll have a really good feel after the first 5 games based on their opponents. You'll have a really good feel for what this team is. Okay.
How do they respond to this? That is going to be the ultimate question, I think, for how this team goes and how they look the rest of the season.
You want some more bad Minnesota football news?
Okay.
The Gopher football team just announced that Antoine Winfield Jr. is out for the season with the foot injury he suffered against Maryland.
Again. Same thing last year with him. He got hurt in the Maryland game last year, and he was out for the season, if my memory strikes me well here.
And Jimmy Butler is going to be traded here. That's actually good news based on all the stuff that's happened. If Tom Thibodeau also goes with him. Yeah. Let's take our first break here, and we'll get to Alan, Matt, and Dan, and our guy Miguel in Minneapolis, and we'll take more of your comments on the Twitter/Periscope feed. If you want to find us, you can find at 1500 ESPN on Twitter or Periscope. Lucky's 13 is powering Vikings vent line all year long. And again, the numbers are 651-646-8255, 877-615-1500, Manny.
Yes, Lucky's 13s is sponsoring Vikings vent line. They have you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. A huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are fantastic. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or you know what? You can get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day, happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday, events and prize giveaways during games too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. And if you can't make it out, if you're having people over for the game, you know what? You can call ahead to Lucky's and order some of these great apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there to pick them up. Find them online at luckys13pub.com, luckys13pub.com.
Hey, it's Darren Doogie Wolfson here from 5 Eyewitness News, and I contribute to 1500 ESPN. The goal is to always have more scoops than Raisin Bran. I pride myself on being up to date on what's happening with the Wolves, Wild, Twins, Vikings, Gopher Sports, the Lynx, United, and everything else going on in this busy sports marketplace. Check out the Scoop Podcast. You can find The Scoop on Apple Podcasts, Podcast One, or wherever you happen to get your podcasts.
The show solely devoted to your reaction on the game. Vikings Vent Line now continues.
Let's see if the Bills can do something. Over the top goes Allen. Touchdown. They break the plane. He did. Touchdown, Buffalo. Now on 2nd and 10. Middle of the field. Ball up in the air. Did it ever hit the ground?
Yes, that's intercepted.
Never hit the ground. Milano already has a fumble recovery. Has an interception.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. Welcome back to Vikings Vent Line, brought to you by Lucky's 13 Pub, luckys13pub.com. Vikings lose to the Bills 27-6 today at home. Embarrassing performance. And Phil Mackey, we were just talking like this. Where does this rank in terms of just embarrassing losses for the Vikings? I think this is right up there as far as ones that I can remember.
It is. It's unique because I can't think of, off the top of my head, I can't think of games in which the Vikings were such heavy favorites and or perceived to be such Super Bowl contenders
and
against
far
a team
superior against a team that they were far superior against, at least on paper.
And losing. And I mean, there's been games where, oh man, the Vikings looked terrible, or the Vikings lost to the Lions, or whatever. They did almost lose to a Lions team that didn't win a game. That might have been the Dan Orlovsky game.
2008, yeah, 12-10.
But that 2008 Vikings team wasn't as good as this team is. And I don't know if that, maybe you could say maybe that this Bills
Gus
team
Farrat started at quarterback for that game.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's in its own interesting, unique category. 651-646-8255. Let's go to Alan in Wisconsin's been on hold the longest. Hey, Alan.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, Viking fan for over 50 years. Yeah, it's probably one of the worst games I've got to see. Also, thank God we didn't sign Barr in the off season. Was just wondering how much money we got for next year to definitely address the offensive line, and definitely we have to every pick offensive line almost in the draft.
It is kind of funny how few picks and top resources they've used. It's like 1 year they heard all this criticism and said, all right, Pat Elflein, and then go get Riley Reid for Mike Remmers, and then they shut the faucet off for this last draft.
Yeah, well, and look, we talked about it, about how they didn't address the offensive line in the draft, and they didn't really address it significantly in free agency. Yeah, that's going to be something to talk about. And Mike Hughes, who they drafted in the first round, who looked promising in preseason, I mean, today he was terrible, and he on defense he was terrible. On special teams, there was a punt where it looked like the Vikings were going to leave it alone and let the Bills down it. And then he, for some reason, inexplicably picked it up and got tackled. And it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and I think he's trying to, because there is a rule where if the team looking to down the punt, if they touch it but they don't down it, you can go in there pretty much consequence free. But what are you doing? Like the clock is running and there's no.
And the second touchdown for the Bills, I think, to put them up 17-0. I don't know what he was doing on that play, because that was just a breakdown on defense, and I don't know, I can't remember who caught it, but he was wide open. There was nobody within 20 yards of him.
One thing we maybe took for granted is when Terrence Newman was a regular presence on this team and out on the field, they didn't have many communication breakdowns, because you had, and Brian Robinson, when he was out there too, you had these veterans who understood this is where everyone needs to be. And there were 2 or 3 times in that game today, and this happened against San Francisco and occasionally against Green Bay. Mackenzie Alexander, Other players on the field had really no idea what they were. There was
out of position, missing tackles.
Yep, one of those big Bills offensive plays in the first half. The Vikings had two guys covering the same receiver and nobody covering whoever caught the pass. Stuff like that just didn't happen as often when Terrence Newman was on the field. Let's go to Matt in South Dakota. You're up next on Vent Line. Hey, Matt.
Hey, guys. Typical trap game didn't really surprise me. Well, I guess it did, but, I mean, this is just the game they were going to lose. Number two, why was Cousins even out there for the last three series? You spend $84 million on a franchise quarterback. They were not coming back. And number three, when Buffalo's quarterback jumped over Barr, even if Barr would have caught him, how was he going to tackle him without getting a penalty flag?
You want to handle, pick your favorite one there. Because like the Cousins thing, they're trying to win the game. So at what point do you wave the white flag? No,
I think probably with like 3 minutes left and you're down 27-0, you'd probably just put Trevor Siemian in maybe. But I mean, Kirk Cousins didn't get hurt, so it's, whatever. On the Barr thing, I mean, I don't know. I just, more than anything on that particular play, I just say kudos to Josh Allen. I mean, he probably was taking a risk there. I mean, we don't really like when quarterbacks do things like that because they could get injured. But, I got to give Josh Allen a lot of credit because everybody, myself included, was like, this kid has no shot on Sunday. And he came out and, the Vikings weren't really ready to play. But to his credit, he took advantage of it. And he made some plays and he made some throws where you're like, okay, you tip your hat to the kid because he could have came into this thing wide-eyed, deer in the headlights, scared out of his mind, like Brock Osweiler was a couple of years ago when he came in. But he stood in there and he made a couple plays. He was pumping his fist. He was putting his teammates up. Like, you got to tip your hat to the kid because it could have been a complete disaster for him, and he came in and he performed.
Yeah. Some more comments here on the Twitter and Periscope feed. Flying Hawaiian says, on the bright side, no missed field goals or extra points today. Dan Bailey had a relatively stress-free day today. It was nice.
Hey, what, 2 kickoffs?
That's it, right?
I think. It was just 2 kickoffs.
Yeah, because they went for 2 on the touchdown.
Yeah.
Seeley Ford says, Zimmer will have this team ready for the Rams. This game was the fluke. Rather have it happen now than the NFC title game. I guess time will tell on that. And Honorable Wright says, I agree with this. Case Keenum's mobility masked many offensive line deficiencies last year. And that's definitely a big difference. I'd rather have Kirk Cousins' arm and Kirk Cousins' passing upside. Case Keenum's mobility and ability to roll out and flush out and keep a play alive and have wide receivers improvise much, much better than Kirk Cousins' ability to.
And I think with Kirk, it's not even a thing where he's Peyton Manning or Tom Brady where he just can't get out of the pocket just because he's just not physically quick enough to do that. I think Kirk has the physical ability to do that. He just won't.
Yeah.
He just won't do it. He's just not, for whatever reason, he's just not comfortable doing that. Whereas Case Keenum's like, look, I'll play backyard football. I'll roll out and do what I can. But to your point, Kirk does have, what we saw at Lambeau Field last week, I don't think Case Keenum had the ability to do that. I don't think he has the ability to lead you down from 2 touchdowns and just throw darts all over the football field.
Now, I guess this is more of a philosophical, big picture question that we just won't have an answer to. The Vikings defense last year in the regular season was good enough that 25 different quarterbacks could have sat back behind, that all I have to do is score 17 points and win a game, okay? If the defense isn't going to be that dominant anymore, and all of a sudden the task is to score 24 points, 28 points on a more regular basis, now there's more pressure on the quarterback. It's that quarterback to defense ratio where, hey, if you're the 2000 Ravens, who wants to sit behind center and hand the ball off for 3 hours? Trent Dilfer, come on down. Tony Banks, right? Come on down. And so now all of a sudden, if this defense is the 12th best defense in the NFL because they're just leakier and whatever, and Mackenzie Alexander's not as good.
And to be honest, too, when you look back at that Ravens team, remember they released Trent Dilfer after they won that Super Bowl, and they went and got Elvis Gerback. I think they gave him a pretty substantial contract because their thought was, well, we can't rely on our defense being the greatest defense of all time again for a second year in a row, so we need to upgrade a quarterback. Well, it didn't really work out for them because Elvis Grbac turned out wasn't really much of an upgrade over Trent Dilfer. So, but I do think that Kirk Cousins is an upgrade over Case Keenum. Kirk just needs to be willing to, when the protection breaks down, he's got to be willing to do more than just stand in one spot in the pocket. He's got to step up. He's got to be a little bit more crafty with his feet. Be willing to get outside the pocket and make some throws that way. I mean, he's got to be willing to do that because they're going to need him to do that.
A few people pointing out in our chat box here on Twitter/Periscope that Laquan Treadwell had the redemption game today, baby. No drops, 4 targets, 4 catches for 33 yards.
Did you see the one catch Laquan he had where he got it was like on a 3rd and 3 and it's 27-0. He leaps up, makes the catch, falls down, gets the first down, and gets up and he does the old
Jerome
Simpson, the old point for a first down. Laquan, you're down by 4 scores.
I love it, dude.
And it's like a 7-yard catch.
I love it.
Just stop it.
I love wide receivers with zero self-awareness. Cordero Patterson, Jerome Simpson, the best.
My goodness.
Miguel in Minneapolis, the floor is yours, man.
What up, Miguel?
Hey, what's going on? Hey, remember that the circumstances are a little different, but it's still an embarrassing loss, 2001 at home to the 1-15 Carolina Panthers, because that was the opener. And it was also you coming off a 41 donut, and you got a home opener against a team that only win was that win. And you know who quarterbacked that team? Chris Winkie.
You know what, Miguel? I'm glad you brought that up. I completely forgot about it, but I was at that game, and I'll never forget it. Some rookie out of Utah, some wide receiver who ended up being pretty good, named Steve Smith, took the opening kickoff of the season.
That's right.
Back for a touchdown. And that set the tone for the entire season for the Vikings.
And that was one of those losses because, like Miguel said, you didn't know. I mean, the Panthers weren't projected to be great. That loss kept getting worse and worse and worse as they continued toward 1-15.
Yep.
So like you couldn't appreciate how horrific the loss was at the time of the loss. And we'll see what happens with the Bills. The Bills feel like a 3-13 team though that you just got trounced by at home.
Yep.
Miguel, go ahead.
Yeah, and the Vikings look like a 6-10 team today. So there you go. But we know, like I tell you, everyone, the league's 8-8. Coaching, talent, health, and some luck gives you, what you're at. They didn't have the Vikings do. That's why they're 1-1-1. They're using their luck cards a lot right now. They're lucky to get out of San Francisco game, quite honestly, because the secondary just has looked horrific. There's been people wide open in every game so far, and then and as far as this game though, I'm going to put the blame if you go, it's mainly on Zimmer because you have to have your team ready.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say they look lethargic, they look like they already won the game, that's a coaching issue then. That's you not having your guys ready. That's you putting out the message, Everson, sit down. That's you, Cook, sit down. If you just dress them and run them out there, the mindset might be different. But it's a coaching thing, whether they're playing or not. But this game has to be on Zim, not having your guys ready to go out there and compete because they didn't compete at all. They got down and then they just stayed down. And that's not a good sign, but we'll see what's going forward because this is a hectic schedule. And even if they lose these two and they go one, then they're 1-3. You got to think as far as if they can be healthy and talent, that this team can pull something together. But the problem still lies that it's going to show up in these next two. It's going to really show up in these next two games, especially showed up today. You've seen Hughes get off. This offensive line in trouble. Because here come 2 top defensive lines. You're talking about we got a top 5 defensive line. Okay, then here goes the other 2 that are up there as well.
Yeah.
And then here they come. And you've already had Jacksonville in the preseason, so here they come. And if you're struggling running and you're struggling pass protection now, boy, oh boy.
I do have some good news. Miguel, that's a great phone call, and we appreciate it. Let's throw this nugget out. We teased this about 20 minutes ago. In 1995... and this might be the last 16.5 or more point favorite to lose to the underdog. It happened on a team's home field. It was actually the second time this team lost to that particular underdog. The 1995 Dallas Cowboys were a 17-point favorite on, let's see here, December 3rd at Texas Stadium in front of a crowd of 64,866. And the Redskins came back in the second half. They were down 10-7 at halftime. They came back in the second half, and they squeaked out a 24-17 win on the road. And Norv Turner was the head coach of that Washington Redskins team. Heath Shuler was the starting quarterback.
Former Tennessee Vol, Heath Shuler.
Yep. Troy Aikman, Hall of Famer at quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. They had Emmitt Smith. I mean, that was prime dynasty time for Dallas. Dallas went on to finish 12-4 in the regular season and win the Super Bowl. So it doesn't have to define your season. Dallas shook it off. Dallas went on to win their third Super Bowl in 4 years. So it doesn't have to define your season, and Dallas didn't let it define their season in 1995.
That's the key part of it, Phil, is how the biggest question now for the Vikings is, this was a terrible loss. Now it becomes, how do they respond? How do they respond?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is very easy to look at this and say, this is terrible. They're going to go 7-9. They got no chance. The big question that's going to determine everything for how this season goes is, how do they respond to these next 2 games?
Yep.
Because if you can go into L.A. and beat the Rams on Thursday, you're going to be an underdog. But if you can go into L.A., beat the Rams on Thursday, then the mindset changes, and it's a little bit easier to forget about what happened against Buffalo today.
Correct.
But you have to go, and now the game against the Rams on Thursday is even bigger than what it was this morning.
It is, and the game against the Eagles in 2 weeks is also they just take on more meaning, so that you don't fall into a deep hole to start the season.
Because if you're 1-3-1 after 5 games because you've lost these next 2, then you still have a chance, but your margin for error is a lot smaller.
Yeah. You're listening to AM 1500 KSTP Minneapolis St. Paul. It's Vikings Vent Line on 1500 ESPN, and we are Manny Hill and Phil Mackey. The numbers, we got one open phone line right now. 651-646-8255, 877-615-1500. And we thank all of you who've been streaming us live on Periscope/Twitter throughout the day, pregame, halftime, and now postgame Vent Line. Let's go to Jeff in Texas. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, there's lots of good comments and lots of stuff I agree with there. And I do hold Zimmer accountable, but I don't think you fire him, obviously. But even either Nance or Tony mentioned that DeFlippo had said that he was concerned if they were taking this here. I can't remember his exact words. I don't know if you guys watched the telecast, but even he was, my concern were the players looking past it. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how much you can put on a coach for players and 20-year-old kids. Call them kids or young men, whatever. Okay, can we really take these guys serious? But any given Sunday, all that stuff, it all rings true. NFL, why they play the game. But here's my biggest concern, big picture on the thing. It really bothered me every time the Vikings came out. Kirk's over by himself, sitting by himself. I see Diggs sitting by a defensive back by himself. Thielen's off by, over by himself. I don't see anybody getting the offense together. The old pictures, you always see the Brady walking up and down and the Rodgers walking up and down and yelling in the face, let's go, let's go, let's go. Where was that?
Jeff, I think I'm not going to read into that. I think all of the stories and all the anecdotes that we've heard from Vikings practice, Kirk Cousins is doing a good job on that front from everything we've heard. I don't think there's any reason to look at it. They got their asses kicked by the worst team in the NFL, at least the worst team through the first month of the season, a team that had a guy quit at halftime on his season and career, a team that has Nathan Peterman out there twice as a starter in embarrassing fashion.
Yeah.
So I think the rah-rah was when they're down by that many points in the second half, I don't know, they're human beings. So we'll see what happens. To Manny's point, how they respond is more important. I'm not gonna read into whether or not Stephon Diggs is mad at Kirk. I'm sure he was mad at Kirk Cousins. Cousins had a terrible game. Cousins is probably mad at the offensive line because Riley Reif got spun around like an idiot 5 different times.
Yeah.
So that's human nature.
It's going to happen, but again, it goes back to what I said before. How do you respond? Did this game piss you off enough to where you are able to go into L.A. on Thursday and get a win? That's what it's going to come down to.
Yes, and that's going to be a quick turnaround, man. And we're going to have a late into the night vent line session too. We still have full phone lines, so as soon as callers jump in and make their points, you feel free to steal their spot by calling 651-646-8255. Mike in Burnsville, you're on the show.
Oh, I was in such a bad mood, but since I've been on hold, a lot's happened. I saw the Salmon Sisters commercial.
Oh, isn't that a great one?
They showed a hot chick sitting next to Brian Urlacher.
Wow.
And then I turned it over to golf, and if Justin Rose keeps pooping his pants, Tiger's going to win the FedEx Cup.
Okay, real quick, because whatever. We're watching Tiger Woods here too.
Yeah.
Where does Justin Rose have to finish for Tiger outside top 5?
Tied for 5th or worse.
Okay.
So, and I think he's 2 strokes out of that, but he's just not playing well right now. Another one that was similar to this was the Indianapolis Colts game 2 years ago. Sat there for that one also. I never thought I'd see them play it bad at home against a bad team in a pretty pressure situation. But another question I have is, I know it's part of your job, but do you guys just marvel at some of the idiots that call you?
We appreciate everyone who calls us because
sure
it helps us keep food on our tables.
The eye rolling you guys must do. Fires them or fire Spielman.
The best part about streaming live on Periscope and Twitter is you get to see when we actually roll our eyes at some of the phone calls. So,
okay, here's another one. Okay. You know how not everyone can in the media always has someone that can't stand them or hates them. The smug guy that you have on 5 to 6, I can't say his name, just like he can't say the Redskins. The guy you have on from 5 to 6, I hope today wipes some of the smugness out of his voice and the smugness probably with the look on his face about thinking how he knows absolutely everything and no one can say anything that would prove him wrong. The Buffalo Bills are a professional football team. Guess what? They practice and they get paid and they're professionals. Any team at any point can walk on and beat a team, even if they're so much better, because just like one of the worst movies in the history of cinema, any given Sunday, somebody can beat somebody in professional sports. That's all I got.
Mike in Burnsville, thank you. By the way, send those angry comments to @MatthewCollar on Twitter. And I don't know, what's his email? I don't even know if he uses his work email, but it'd be mcollar@hbi.com.
And Matthew's a big boy. He can handle all that.
Yeah. But I don't think I think we all agreed that the Vikings were not losing this game. And he left the door open more than I would have in our conversations this week. And by the way, to defend Matthew is one of the best Vikings analysts and smartest people covering this team that I've ever seen. And if you're not listening to the Purple Podcast on a regular basis with him, Sage Rosenfels, Courtney Cronin, you're definitely missing some good stuff. So check it out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Matthew had the same opinion about this game that the rest of us had, that the Vikings were 17-point favorites. They needed to come in and take care of business against an inferior opponent. They didn't do that. They were not ready to play today for whatever reason. It could be coaching. It could be whatever. Maybe guys were partying too much last night. I don't know. But everything about this game said that the Vikings should win. And they should have won the game. So, I mean, I'm not going to look at any experts or anybody that said, oh, that guy was wrong because he said the Vikings should. Everybody said that.
Yeah.
Everybody said that.
Yeah. A lot of egg on faces here as we collect ourselves after this one. Back to the vent lines, powered by Lucky's 13. Joe in Baltimore. Hey, Joe.
Hey, guys. First-time caller, Viking fan my whole life. Just I guess just more of an observation. Does anybody see, when the Vikings remind me of the Philly game last year? Is there any adjustments that this team makes? It seems like once we get our heads kicked in, we have no answers. I watch, and Zimmer's this defensive genius, and I see nothing ever changing. I guess I'm a little spoiled living in Baltimore, where every time this defense and the Ravens is fantastic. The Cincinnati game Thursday, they were getting their heads kicked in, and in halftime, it was a completely different game. They always come back and win when they were down by 21. Does anyone else see this, or is it just me?
Well, the Vikings defense, Joe, actually did adjust to the second half. They gave up very little in the second half, and part of that's because Buffalo didn't really need a lot more, and Buffalo ran the ball and wasn't interested in turning the ball over. And I disagree. I actually think Mike Zimmer teams have done a good job for the most part at halftime. Yes, there are some glaring examples, such as the Colts game from, was it 2 years ago now, and the NFC Championship game. And then there was the Packers game where we had some insubordination and players making their own calls on the field, but they rectified that in the offseason. It's really easy after a game like this to knee-jerk overreact and say, they never make adjustments.
I think Mike Zimmer is one of the best in the NFL at doing that. I mean, they look at the Rams game from last year. Remember the Rams game? They come in, Jared Goff and Todd Gurley in that offense, they march right down the field the first drive of the game, and they score a touchdown.
Yeah.
They got nothing after that. That is classic case of making adjustments. That's what, Mike Zimmer, for the most part, has done a lot of that since he's been the coach here. Look, today, I don't think there's really any other way of describing today other than they just weren't ready to play today for whatever reason, and they got their butts kicked.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're picking the schedule before the season, and you're like going through, and there's 5 games you're sure about, and there's a bunch of games that you're pretty sure about, and there's some that are just. This was one of the 5 games you were sure about as you looked at the schedule, that there's no way they lose this game at home, even though Buffalo was a playoff team last year. Going around the scoreboard here, the Rams are up in the middle of the second quarter, 20-6 on the Chargers. So barring a road comeback there for Phillip Rivers and company, the Rams are going to be 3-0 going into that game next week. The Bears are down 14 rip on the road to the Cardinals right now.
Who have scored 1 touchdown in 2 weeks.
Oof. Sam Bradford, 4 of 5, 92 yards and 2 touchdowns in that one so far.
Wow.
And the Saints came back. They pulled it off in overtime, beating the Falcons 43-37. Chiefs put up 38 more points and a bunch more touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes. The Packers did finish off their loss, 31-17 in that one. And someone tweeted out that Rodgers not only has a bum knee, but on the other leg, a bum hamstring now. He strained his hamstring trying to run for a first down.
Some former Vikings running back had 120 yards on 19 carries and 2 touchdowns today. I won't say his full name, but his first name starts with
Moelle Moore is back on fire. Adrian Peterson going to make people eat crow, including our radio show in the afternoons. TJ in Wisconsin, you're up next on Ventline.
Hey guys, unfortunately I have no scathing Matthew Collar criticism to offer here, but one of the things, and just this is kind of what you see with the Patriots, where they're good for a stinker in September, but guess what? You're the New England Patriots. You've won 5 Super Bowls. You've got Tom Brady. You've got Bill Belichick. This Viking team, to me, just seemed like they thought they were good for a stinker. They thought they could kind of overlook, which is not hard when you got the Rams on the road next week. But if you think about it, the crowning achievement in the Zimmer era here is the Minneapolis Miracle. And when that is the best thing that you've done, that's just what's disheartening to me. I'm not worried about the season. I think they're going to play a lot better next week in L.A., but just to see them come out from the top down thinking they're entitled to a win here is just really disappointing to me when this team really hasn't done much of anything achievement-wise in the Zimmer era.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's it did feel like a reality check and sort of an entitlement check. The Patriots last year, that wasn't the year Tom Brady was. I think didn't Tom Brady play all? Yeah, he played all 16.
2 years ago when he had the suspension from Deflategate.
So even with Tom Brady, the Patriots gave up an average of 33 points per game defensively in their first month last year, including a 42-27 loss to the Chiefs at home and a 33-30 loss to the Panthers at home. But again, that is the Patriots, and they have a track record of playing mediocre football in September and then almost never losing in November and December. So yeah, I keep going back to what we've been saying. It's okay to call this an absolutely unacceptable, embarrassing loss, but to go further than that and say that the season's over or that Mike Zimmer is a bad coach or this or this or this, let's pump the brakes. Mm-hmm. Let's pump the brakes. 651-646-8255. Let's go to our guy, Realistic Randy. Realistic Randy in Oakland. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I honestly don't have the energy to go off like I really want to, I think, because after last week, I pretty much spent all my energy out going off on Laquan Treadwell and Daniel Carlson. But this defense, man, it's regressed from last season. They're nowhere close to the number 1 defense so far in this early season like they were last year, and I think they're carrying the same lethargic defense from the NFC Championship game. Xavier Rhodes, he hasn't looked like a number one cornerback or a shutdown cornerback in the league like he did last year. And I've been a big proponent that Anthony Barr does not need a contract extension. I think he's lazy. I think he plays half-assed. The coach even spoke out on it. But this year, he has been garbage. So far in these 3 games, he has been garbage. Today against the Buffalo Bills, you had 2 penalties last time I checked, 1 face mask, 1 horse collar, and then you let Josh Allen leapfrog over you like a horse. Everybody acts like this dude Anthony Barr is Khalil Mack. He's not. He is overrated. If he's gone, the defense could still be good. And then John DeFilippo, Manny Hill, we talked about this in week 1. John DeFilippo needs to stop being extra conservative. When the game was starting to get out of hand, he kept going to running plays for like first and second down and leaving Kirk Cousins for third and long pass attempts. With this offensive line, it's not that good. I don't understand why you continue to do that. So this coaching staff needs to get it together. Anthony Barr, I said I would have traded him in the offseason when his value is still high, but guess what? His value is regressing. So I don't know. And Mike Zimmer, he needs to get it together too. He's supposed to be a defensive guru, and you let Josh Allen look like the second coming of Joe Montana. So that's pretty much all I got to say on it. I'm not even mad, really, because I'm so used to this at this point. I expected the Vikings to win, too. I expected them to cover. But guess what? This debacle that they had today, like everyone, all my friends and family were texting me like, damn, man, like, what's going on with your Vikings? I'm like, I don't even care to get mad.
Yeah.
This is just what they do.
You're an emotionless robot now, which is pretty much what you have to be, Randy, if you're going to be a Vikings fan.
It definitely keeps your life living long, because I'm telling you one thing. I'm tired of shaving minutes, hours, and days off my life yelling at this team. I'm tired of it. That was a pathetic performance today.
Yeah.
And like I said, the defense overall, this is supposed to be the bread and butter of this team. The defense has been nowhere close to what it was last year.
Yeah, Randy in Oakland. Realistic Randy. We'll catch up again soon here. Let's take another call here from Maple Grove. Travis, you're on Vikings Vent Line.
I know. What?
Hey, Travis, you're up on Vent Line.
What up, Travis? Travis.
Oh?
There you go.
We got other people on hold, so you got to figure it out in the first couple seconds, or you run the risk of us hanging up on you there. David in Virginia, you're on Vikings Vent Line.
Hey, guys.
What's happening, man?
Oh, just disgusted. I've been a Vikings fan for 54 years, and I have not seen a loss quite as bad as that one. Now, granted, we lost 41-0, 41 donut against the Giants, but they were a good team. This was a bad team. And in our own house, no less, we lay an egg like you wouldn't believe. It's just, I pulled my hair out if I had any left, and I don't. And it's just unbelievable. From play calling, DeFilippo, it was the next biggest thing. He's going to last only a year, and he's going to be a head coach. Oh, not with this play calling. That ain't going to happen, people. We'll be stuck with him next year.
That's an official Judge Zolgad write that down prediction that John DeFilippo will be a head coach after 1 year of coordinating. We'll see. It's week 3. It's week 3. We'll see. David in Virginia, thanks for the phone. Sorry to cut you off. We have full phone lines right now. In fact, we got to squeeze in a 2-minute break here real quick, and then we'll come back with our final segment of Vikings Vent Line. We'll get to Dan and Harold and Bill and Tyler and more comments and questions and observations and rips and sarcasm in our comment section on Periscope and Twitter. It's just the @1500 ESPN page if you're on your smartphone or on your computer somewhere. And Lucky's 13, powering Vikings Vent Line all season long. Where did that one rank on the most embarrassing losses that you've seen as a Vikings fan? We'll talk more about it next.
At 3 Day Blinds, we're passionate about helping you choose the perfect window treatments for your home. That's why we provide a design consultant to come to your house for free to give you a better experience with more beautiful results.
When I hear back from my clients telling me they absolutely love what we put together, I get really excited.
We can provide a custom fit product that's going to be just immaculate and perfect inside
inside that window. Our design consultants help you choose draperies, blinds, shutters, and more to fit your style and budget. There's no obligation to buy a thing, but the advice is priceless. To set up a free design consultation and get free installation, go to 3dayblinds.com.
We were absolutely blown away by the value, the quality. We are very, very happy with our decision.
It just makes my place feel more like home.
Set up your free design consultation and get free installation. Go to 3dayblinds.com. That's 3dayblinds.
The show solely devoted to your reaction on the game. Vikings Vent Line now continues.
3rd and 7 from the 10. Pressure on Cousins. Pocket collapsing. And Cousins, the ball comes out. And it looks like Buffalo's recovered.
They got it.
Buffalo football at the 15. Here's Cousins. Pressure on him. And the ball's out again. And the Bills recovered again at the 25-yard line.
Vikings Vent Line continues on for one more segment, brought to you by Lucky's 13 Pubs, Lucky's13pubs.com. Vikings get their butts kicked at home 27-6 to the, I guess, maybe not so lowly Buffalo Bills, Phil Mackey.
We'll find out, I guess.
At least today they weren't so lowly.
Yeah, they were reading headlines, and they're human beings too. So it wasn't shocking that they came out early and said, all right, we're here. We're not the dumpster fire that everyone thinks. There were some guys on this team that made the playoffs last year. I really thought the Vikings were going to absorb that initial wave of energy. Okay, wow, they fell down by 10 points. Oh, even 17 points. They're still going to win the game. And they just never... Their first half drive chart, as I fling my pen into my face... much like the Vikings offense did during the first half offensively.
Yes.
I think their longest drive in the first half was 5 plays and 2 turnovers and punts. And
they ran 20. I saw our guy Chris Long from Eyewitness News tweet out that they basically ran 21 plays in the first half, the Vikings offense did.
Yeah.
There was 3 and outs, and I think only 2 drives went more than a 3 and out. And I saw something too. They didn't run a play in Buffalo territory until like sometime in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yikes! Yeah, they didn't cross the 50-yard line. They were making a big deal out of that on the broadcast. Yeah, that's Adam Thielen, garbage time player of the game, 14 catches. If you're in a PPR league, Adam Thielen actually gave you a pretty nice day fantasy wise. 651-646-8255. Let's get to Dan in Lakeville. Hey Dan, you're on Vent Line with Manny and Mackey.
Hi, talking about the defense. I mean, we have not looked like even a top 10 defense in the league, and we were ranked number 1. So, I mean, our defense should have improved this year, but we signed Richardson, and we just haven't looked good at all.
Yeah, it's not. I think there's a pretty good chance that it's just not going to be the same defense as last year. Doesn't mean it can't be a Super Bowl caliber defense or a top 10 defense. It's just really hard to replicate that type of dominating defensive performance when you're 25% on third downs and your red zone rate is the best in the NFL. It's just, you don't carry that over year to year to year like you would a great quarterback or a great offense.
The only time I can really think of where you think of defenses that were just fantastic across the board for a season that was kind of replicated the next year was maybe Seattle. After they blew out the Broncos in the Super Bowl, they came back the next year and they were just as dominant. Mm-hmm. But other than that, even the 85 Bears, that the defense wasn't, it was still a good defense, but it just wasn't the same the next year.
Yeah.
2000 Ravens, it was still a good defense. It just wasn't the same the next year. Buccaneers in 2002, they blow out the Raiders in the Super Bowl. The next year, you still got a lot of the same cast of characters back. They just weren't as dominant. It's very, very hard to maintain that level of excellence where you're number 1 on defense across the board. It just does not happen that often. And again, I think that is why they went and got Kirk Cousins, because I think they realized, okay, we've got some good pieces here on defense, but we cannot bank on being number 1 statistically across the board on defense again next year. So let's try and upgrade the quarterback position. And today, I mean, and really the first 3 weeks, we've seen signs that this defense is just not as good as it was last year.
Yes. Let's go to Bill in Minneapolis. You're next up on Vikings Vent Line.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Good, man. Go ahead.
I've got a little different. Although Mackey touched on it, these are physical specimens, the Vikings. Great athletes and probably average intelligence. So all day, all week long, the media, their friends, everyone, you're a 17-point favorite, guys. You are. Well, they really don't want to believe this, but in their fractured psyches, something's in there that says, Jesus, this has got to be true. And if that's the case, I can bring my B game. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, I guess my theory is, if you do play this game 100 times, the Vikings roll 70%. They play a close game that results in a win another 10 times.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just, I don't know, one team was jacked up, the other team fell behind early and couldn't get out of its own way. And Buffalo did a great job. Once they were fortunate enough to pick up a couple fumbles and the first drive was extended because of a 15-yard penalty.
They took advantage.
And they played not a prevent defense. It was kind of a classic Leslie Frazier cover 2. Hey, we're going to give you 5 yards underneath all day long. Keep that clock running.
And we're going to be fast, and we're going to tackle well. The Bills tackled really, really well today.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's been an issue for them the first few weeks, if tackling's been an issue, but they tackled well today.
Yes. Harold and Blaine, welcome to Ventline.
Well, thank you. I'd like to say that last week I turned off the game halfway through the third quarter, and the 6.5 quarters that I've watched in the last 2 weeks looked exactly the same. So, although they had a great comeback, I don't think the first 2.5 quarters last week looked any that much better than the 4 quarters today.
You didn't think the offense looked a little better in the last couple quarters against Green Bay?
No, not in the last 2 quarters, but I'm saying like in the first 2.5 quarters.
Okay.
Yeah, because I stopped watching halfway through the third quarter.
I got you. I
thought it was unwatchable.
You should have watched the second half against Green Bay.
But I do have something positive to say about the first quarter today. I got my 48 Plymouth running.
That's nice. What does it sound like? Can you give us a little sound effect?
No. Okay. But it's not loud. It has an original engine, so it's just kind of purrs.
The Vikings offense looked like it was from 1964 today, too.
Yeah, sure did.
We're going to take one final call here on Ventline, powered by Lucky's 13. Tyler in Maple Grove. Go ahead.
Hey, I got a couple things to take from today's game. One thing that I think a lot of fans want to jump on is the second anything really bad like this happens, we just want to fire everyone. But one thing that really concerns me about the Zimmer tenure is in the last 4 seasons, there's been one game every year where we just completely forget to show up. It was the Seahawks in 15, the Colts in 16, the championship game last year, and now this game. How can we fix this? Because this just seems like a failure by Zimmer to keep the guys ready and motivated.
Well, let me follow that with a question here, just to stack it on top, because I think we're all trying to figure out: is this a blip on the radar, or is it a long term? Is this team just not as good as we thought or hoped? And Fish Tacos for Life, actually, with a great question that kind of carries us to the end of Ventline. I love that handle too, and totally agree with it. Fish Tacos for Life.
That's great.
On Periscope/Twitter says, Philadelphia laid the blueprint on how to attack a Mike Zimmer defense. Do you think that's true?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I just think that more than anything, I just think that this team just needs to play better. I think that this defense the defense needs to play better than what they have.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're capable of playing better. But I think if anything, what the Vikings are showing is that you cannot overlook any opponent. You cannot go into any game like your bleep doesn't stink. And I think that's a lesson that they learned today. And the unfortunate thing is these are things that every team should already understand and know, that you can't just waltz into any game thinking that you can give, a half-assed performance and still walk away with a victory. You have to show up every week, even against a team that you are clearly better than, and take care of business. What did I say this morning? Go into this game, take care of business. Don't mess around. Just take care of business and get ready for the Rams. Didn't mean go in and, we got this game in the bag. We're good. And then get your butt whooped. Take care of business. They didn't take care of business today.
Who would have thought that the discussion about resting players in the second half would have applied the other way? That, no, maybe they should start resting players because they're just getting their butts kicked so bad against the Buffalo Bills. So, I don't know. Yeah, if anyone, I'd love to see before the day is over. Did Bills Mafia light anybody on fire? Did the Bills
put anybody through tables?
Yeah, because
flaming tables.
That's really the only thing that was missing from today is of Vikings, like Riley Reif not only getting beat but getting powerbombed through a flaming table before the sack of Kirk Cousins. So that's going to be it for this week's Vikings Vent Line. If you ever miss any of Vikings Vent Line on demand, you can now find it on the Purple Podcast feed, where there's all kinds of great, mostly daily content from Matthew Collar, Sage Rosenfels, Judd Zulgad, and Mackey and Judd with Manny also on the show, 3 to 6 p.m. every weekday. So plenty more of this tomorrow. Thanks to Jonathan Harrison for pushing all the right buttons and screening phone calls here on Vent Line. All right, we'll see if they can beat the Rams in a few days. Quick turnaround, and then another tough opponent, the Eagles, in a couple weeks from now. Full coverage at 1500ESPN.com. Thank you to Lucky's 13. For Manny Hill, I'm Phil Mackey. That's a wrap on Vikings Vent Line.
And a 9 from inside the 10 as Allen looks, takes off. He can run with it. Allen reaches for the pylon, and I think he has it. Wait for a signal. Finally, we get one of the linesmen says touchdown.
Anthony Barr coming up the middle, free safety. Gotta get it go.
Allen steps up, jumps over the defenders to pick up the first.
My heart skips skipping the beat. You're not close enough, so that space between you and me, let's lose it. The way you're dancing, swaying to the music, girl, that body and how you move it. Every time you cross my mind, girl, I lose it.
Alexa, play the Country Heat playlist.
Okay. I don't think you know what you're doing to me. You got
With Amazon Music, a voice is all you need. Get tens of millions of songs. Download the Amazon Music app today.
Clock is ticking. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley rejects some conditions wanted by Christine Blasey Ford and her lawyers for her testimony. In a letter to the lawyers, Grassley says no to Ford wanting Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh to testify first. He adds that the committee will use an outside counsel to ask questions and ask if she could testify next Wednesday rather than Thursday, as requested. The chairman also set a deadline of 10 p.m. this evening to hear back from Ford. California Democrat Dianne Feinstein accuses Grassley of bullying a survivor of attempted rape in order to confirm a nominee. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein says the New York Times got it wrong when the paper reported that he had talked about using the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office. The AP's Eric Tucker reports.
He's referred to anonymous sources who have their own agenda, and he says he's not going to respond to it. But I should also note, though, by the same token, the Justice Department did issue a statement.